Hello everyone. Last time was rather more heavy-handed than I expected it to be. A lot of people came to different conclusions about Sasuke's arc in that episode than I expected. I thought it would be a pretty unanimous understanding of what I am doing there. As such, I'll be leaving that a little bit cloudy for now until the time comes in the future to make it more clear. I'm talking about the whole hospital incident. Neji finished the fight that had him on the wrong foot initially, and perhaps intends to poise himself for redemption for his silly choices in the initial portion of that encounter. I'm trying to be vague just in case someone clicks on this as the first video they've ever seen and end up spoiled by accident. I mean, that might happen anyway, but a long-form rewrite like this must be unfriendly to new viewers. My older videos of this rewrite were better visually, but I didn't even use music at first, so there's a few episodes that are definitely lower tier than the more present ones. The big three have found themselves as the current only ones left standing in our climactic battle that's been going on for the last few episodes. And with all side conflicts resolved for the time being, it looks like we're going to have an episode entirely centered around this only still going battle. The storm's been getting worse and worse as time goes on, to the point that their intense battling has been masked by the gray of heavy rainfall, and the thick clouds overhead have nearly stoppered all of the sun's light. It's kind of funny that just introducing an element like making it rain had a few people at first thinking that a ninja had conjured the storm. Can't some things just naturally occur in Naruto? I've also been dropping little hints here and there that since the Triumphant 12 returned to Konoha, the village has actually experienced an odd, hot season of cloudless, warm days. I wasn't trying to be too blatant with that narrative, but throwing in hints just here and there. Some of the more critical of you have shaped me into someone who needs to provide an explanation for everything, even the weather. Also, something that no one brought up, but I will just because, I decided last week to use the term ninja art for Sakura's genjutsu. It just felt strange assigning an element to something that was an illusion. So I might be breaking even more Naruto lore in doing that, but ninja art sounds pretty cool too. And unlike saying something like lightning style, lightning whip, jutsu in 3 parts like that, genjutsu can simply be ninja art, dazzling lights. Obviously, some creative liberties were taken there, but I like what I've done with it. This might also create some questions about where I'm getting jutsu from. I actually refer to a master list of every single jutsu that's ever been used in the manga, show, and novels to see how many I can utilize that actually exist. But for the requirements of a fight like Sasuke's prolific use of the lightning style techniques, I did make up a lot. I don't see people having an issue with this, but thought I'd explain my process with jutsu in general anyway. I had a few minor issues with my mic last week that hopefully I'll have solved for this week. When I was speaking too quietly at the end of some of my sentences, the mic just decided to stop listening a couple times, so let's just call that user error. It didn't necessarily miss any words, it was just that some of my sentences abruptly ended and another one began right after. I don't like removing too much of that natural break between sentences. It sounds too weird to me. Even if the natural differences are minute, like 0.5 seconds instead of 0.6 seconds, there's something about the short breaks that throw me off. A part of that may be why I dislike AI voiceover. If you can make it work, great, but there are a fair amount of especially fanfiction channels that employ AI voices, and never mind the poor pronunciation for Japanese words and names, the pacing often feels super off for me. Japanese is a mostly phonetic language, where each character has just one way to pronounce it. But the AI still finds a way to mispronounce those names. Names like Sasuke come to mind. If you applied English phonetics to Sasuke, it would be Sasuke. And that's how those AI fanfiction channels pronounce it. Anyway, you've caught me rambling, so I'm going to stop now and get into the episode. On with the show. The thunder now is more relentless than ever, as the lightning that precedes it dances from cloud to cloud before striking down far on the horizon. Equally, the rain threatens to flood the village's every corner with its maddening torrent. The pockmarks across the battlefield have nearly flooded completely from the never-ending downpour. Naruto staggers and slumps slightly, exhaustion pulling at his limbs, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He's been locked in combat longer than any other against their foe Hokage, and the strongest foe any of them have ever faced. Sakura stands nearby, her fingers twitching, her stance defensive but strained. She's exhausted her use of the bestial chakra and must now rely on what left she's learned all on her own. Sasuke, meanwhile, is on Naruto's other side, sharp-eyed and ready. Unlike his cooperator, Sasuke is nearly fresh for this fight, having specifically held back during his earlier combat with Neji and Danzo. His Sharingan is alive, and ready to meet this challenge. Near the tree line, beyond the ravaged summit, Ino struggles to stay upright. As she leans heavily against a tree, grasping at her neck and the seal Minato, or Shisui, had placed upon it. She squints against the rain and remains locked on the fight in the distance. Tenten has regained consciousness but has curled into a ball nearby, nursing several broken ribs. They've chosen the cover of trees as both struggle with their handicaps, but the rain is coming down so hard and the wind is pounding so relentlessly that they hardly have any shelter at all. Shifting his heels slightly, Sasuke blinks against the storm raging around them, the winds howling like a chorus of specters. "Naruto, are you ready to finish this?" Sasuke asked, slowly reaching into Naruto's pack and pulling out several of his Raijin kunai. "Yeah, don't mind me, I still have a lot of... What are you doing?" Naruto asked, noticing Sasuke's quick fingers. "Trust me," Sasuke answered quietly. "I'm all out of my fancy stuff," Sakura panted, shaking her head at the limited use of such techniques. "But I plan on layering some genjutsu." Shisui, in the form of Minato, stood still and watched them in contemplation of his own. How they figured out his exact identity was alarming, considering he had intended to take over the village under the guise of Minato. Did that mean that anyone who knew Minato before 4 years ago would also deduce this conclusion rather easily? Was he being that transparent? Except that everyone in the village seemed to have fallen for it completely. He even factored in potential issues with Naruto figuring something out, but that he'd formed this coalition group to usurp him was a little more than he expected. In the physical body of Minato, he had access to the Hokage's vast reserve of chakra. But to fight a Jinchuriki on equal ground, he meant to have one of those beasts himself. Danzo was meant to transfer the beast into him from the Yamanaka brat. These kids were not utilizing the beasts properly anyway. Emotion flickering to something more fierce than he expected, Shisui snarled and pulled out a kunai. Initiating the fight's start upon seeing movement from Shisui, Sakura weaved several series of hand seals. "Ninja art! Roiling dust!" Sakura shouted as a rolling cloud of dust erupted from her, expanding outward and cloaking the battlefield. Though dust normally would be defeated by the wall of water peppering the ground, this genjutsu held up and swirled around Shisui Minato. Under the cover of the dust genjutsu, Naruto darted forward, kunai spinning in his hand. At the same time, Sasuke circled wide, his Sharingan practically glowing crimson as he tracked Shisui Minato for movement through the obscuring veil. Sakura maintained her position, carefully manipulating the dust with subtle bursts of chakra, creating shifting shadows and phantom figures to disorient Shisui Minato further. Not easily deceived though, Shisui Minato responded as he had before, with a sudden surge of wind chakra, scattering Sakura's genjutsu with a short-lived gale. As visibility returned, he flickered into view directly in front of Naruto. Sakura set to work on another genjutsu, waiting for an opportune lightning strike to pull it off. Shisui Minato's kunai struck like a viper, aiming for Naruto's chest. At the last moment, Naruto parried, his blade sparking against Shisui Minato's. Sasuke appeared behind the fake Hokage as sparks flew between he and Naruto. Conjuring a whip of lightning, Sasuke coiled it around the usurper Hokage's free hand to hurt and restrict. Twisting between the two, Shisui Minato tugged hard on Sasuke's whip and nearly pulled him into a collision with Naruto. As Sasuke lifted from the ground, he brandished one of Naruto's Raijin kunai and threw it at the Hokage, who attempted to create distance. Before their bodies smashed into each other, Naruto was gone and reappearing with the thrown kunai. Lightning flashed, and Sakura executed ninja art, sparking flash, briefly blinding Shisui Minato and leaving him open for Naruto's continued offense. Landing on his feet, Sasuke wasted no time as he rushed to rejoin Naruto in his pushing attack. Getting inside Shisui Minato's guard, Naruto landed a savage fist just below the ribs that sent Shinato skidding across the slick ground. Eyes fixated on Naruto, Shinato's blind spot was instantly exploited by Sasuke and the lightning leaping across his fingertips. Sakura threw out another genjutsu, dashing closer for more deliberate execution. Ninja art, 1,000 steps! The sounds of Naruto and Sasuke's steps went from those of 2 people to those of hundreds, forcing Shinato to keep a visual on both. The back of his vest burnt in a small line as Sasuke attempted to burn through it with lightning augmenting his fingers, but Shinato leapt away before damage was done. How are they moving like that? Ino wondered quietly enough that even Tenten couldn't hear her. It's like they've been fighting together their whole lives. Though not formally a team, their movements aligned with uncanny symmetry, their cooperation as natural as breathing. They didn't even shout directions to one another, and they were already clearly pressing Shinato. Suddenly vanishing and reappearing beside Sakura, Shinato stared down at her with contempt. In a flash, he swiped at her and she burst in an explosion of pink petals. The sound of her dashing alerted him to her actual location. She wasn't quite so deft as the other 2 in getting around. Reappearing before her again, Shinato wasted no time in crushing her, but Sakura melted into a splash of water. Growling, Shinato looked up to see the 3 standing together again, with Sakura hiding behind them. If he could remove her stupid distractions, the other 2 would be far easier to deal with. I can't believe you've pushed me to this. Shinato laughed, shrugging and betraying no hint of frustration. But even you have made mistakes. Throwing his hands together, Shinato began weaving several signs that Sasuke recognized. Clearly some of you trusted me initially. Isn't that right, Sasuke? I wonder how you 3 would fare against Madara Uchiha. Shinato laughed again, finishing his jutsu. Kuchiyose Enkaku Edo Tensei. After a few moments of silence, Sasuke chuckled. Couldn't be bothered to try that out at least once, huh? What is this? Shinato wondered angrily, looking at his hands in confusion. I never trusted you, Sasuke insisted. I intentionally gave you the incorrect hand seals for that technique. Madara Uchiha, though? Sakura wondered. That could have been actually dangerous. That's enough out of you, Shinato snarled. I will not be made a fool of. Shadow Clone Jutsu! Emerging from their own shadows, 3 Shinatos quickly moved to apprehend the 3. Naruto answered with a swift strike, sensing the sinister chakra before the other 2 noticed. Sasuke clashed with his clone momentarily before being kicked from below and launched high into the air. As he spun to regain his bearings, Shinato's main body appeared above him and cracked a double-handed fist over Sasuke's head, sending him rocketing to the ground below. His impact carved a crater in the now soft ground, and Sasuke fell through to the flooded tunnels. Sakura, meanwhile, simply did not have the requisite taijutsu to mount a proper defense against her clone, who cracked her hard in the side of the face and sent her clear across the battlefield. Sakura! Naruto shouted, unable to run to her aid with Shinato barring the path. Every time you morons think you've gleaned an advantage, I have to remind you who the top dog is, huh? Shinato asked Naruto, who stared past him to see if Sakura would stir. The sight of both his allies, immediately disposed of, ignited something deep within Naruto. The fox's chakra flared, mixing violently with his own. Pain lanced through his body as the storm around him faded from his perception. Instead, he was plunged into memories, not his own, a kaleidoscope of flashing imagery from the fox itself. Kushina, Lord Hokage muttered gently, sitting beside her bed. Stirring, Kushina felt a pulse of pain in her belly and cringed as the ominous whisperings of the fox echoed almost like an afterthought. Lord Third, how long was I out? Kushina asked, attempting to sit up in her bed. Just over 2 days, my dear. Hiruzen smiled, blinking at the empty seat on her opposite side. He's been at your side since you came to the hospital, and of course the one time he steps away, you wake up. Kushina remembered everything without the third Hokage having to describe it to her. It felt like the fox wanted her to remember what it had done with her while it had control. She had been heavily discouraged from continuing as a shinobi in the war, considering the volatility of the fox. The stress hung on her heavier than she would ever admit. The idea that she might be forced to retire as a ninja just because she had this beast inside of her. And though the fox was easy to house at first, as she and it grew older, the fox gained further and further malice. When the third Hokage first captured the fox, Kushina was still a young girl, and the fox was the size of a small dog. It was easy to wrangle and easier still to lock inside her. Nobody knew why it took on this vastly weakened form, but since it was nothing but advantageous for them, they did not let the chance for it to escape slip away. So, for much of Kushina's youth, the fox was easily contained, and she was able to pursue the life of a shinobi alongside Minato. Lately, though, the fox seemed to have finally returned to its full strength. Much of Minato's time was spent using his knowledge of Fu and Jutsu to create a stronger seal for Kushina. This new jutsu would need to complement the already existing seal, because replacing it would allow for even an instant where the fox could escape from its jail. And so, in this time when Kushina was possessed by the fox, she relived the experience of tearing through enemy ninja on the battlefield. Though the fox's method of savaging them was a little much for Kushina during a war, she ultimately couldn't find fault with the slaughter of so many enemies. However, the memory didn't end, and eventually the fox's eyes turned to fellow Leaf Shinobi. Wincing and shaking herself loose from the memory, Kushina couldn't help but ask the dreaded question. Did the fox, did I kill any friendlies? Slowly blinking, Hiruzen gently coddled one of Kushina's hands. The fox, Kushina. You cannot be blamed for its wrath. Pulling her knees to her chest and wrapping her arms around her head, Kushina shuddered at the indescribable madness she allowed to befall the battlefield.
I may have guided your hand, but you tasted their blood.
The fox whispered menacingly. Why would you do this? Kushina shouted in the hospital room, shocking Hiruzen, though she spoke only to the fox within.
Your people deserve it, and more,
Kurama muttered. So it was all a facade up until now? A game of deception? Why would you tell me your name and share all those stories with me? Kushina sobbed, infuriated and desperate. The door to the room rattled open to Lady Tsunade, who raised her eyebrows at Kushina being awake. Well, the worst of it is over now, Tsunade muttered, picking up the clipboard with all of Kushina's information and jotting down that she was lucid. The door, now ajar, left the prying eyes of other ninja and visitors in the hospital. Though Kushina did not look up, she could hear them. Check it out, it's the monster! How is she not in chains? She killed my brother!
How could the leaf hide that from us?
Be gone! Tsunade snapped, slamming the clipboard down on a table at the foot of the bed and marching angrily to the door as the men and women in the hall scattered and fled. Sorry about that. Forgot to close the door, Tsunade said, shaking her head and returning to the clipboard.
You and I are the same now.
The fox echoed again before silence fell. Standing from his seat, Hiruzen nodded at Tsunade before walking around the bed and headed for the exit.
I'll see if I can't find Minato.
No! Kushina shouted. I can't see him now. No, I don't want any more visitors. Silently grimacing, Hiruzen nodded again and left the room. You'll feel better after a good sleep, Tsunade reassured her. You have no idea what this is like, Kushina shot back, annoyed that Tsunade thought gentle words were the remedy. To have the voices of a monster in your head? A voice that can actually become weaponized? After a few more silent minutes and routine checks from Tsunade, the Sannin eventually left the room as well, and left Kushina alone to silence, and to the occasional taunting of the fox just beneath the surface. As the sun sunk in the sky, its light transformed the sky from blue to orange and yellow and red, before darkness finally came, and Kushina remained balled up in her bed. The room was dimly lit now, perhaps only by the soft glow of moonlight slipping through the blinds. Kushina sat on the edge of her bed now, staring at the cold tile floor. Her hands were clasped together, trembling slightly. Her vibrant red hair spilled over her shoulders, dull and lifeless, as if reflecting her despair. I should be locked up. A monster can't walk free. Not after. Her voice broke, and she hugged herself tightly, tears spilling silently. The door creaked open, and Minato stepped inside. His silhouette was outlined against the hallway's light. He carried the wariness of a long day, but his blue eyes soften as they land on Kushina. Hey, they didn't exactly have flowers at the market this late, so... He holds up a small bag of skewered dango with a sheepish smile. I figured these might help cheer you up. Kushina didn't look up, her shoulders curling inward. Why are you here? Kushina whispered. I didn't want to see. But I wanted to see you, Minato answered, matching her volume. Kushina shook her head a couple times before finally raising it, her tear-streaked face a mixture of anger and anguish. I don't want to see you. You should hate me like everyone else does. After what it did? How could you even look at me? Minato sets the dango on the bedside table and kneels in front of her, taking her hands in his. She tries to pull away, but he gently holds on. Kushina, you and the fox, you're the same now. Kushina recoiled as if struck, her breath hitching. So it's true, Kushina choked. I am a monster. No, Minato answered, shaking his head firmly. That's not what I mean. Kushina looked at him, confusion and hurt flickering in her eyes. Minato takes a deep breath, searching for the right words. I mean that, yes, you share the same body. Sometimes, it might even try to trick people into thinking it's you, but it's not. The fox is just a mask, a fake, a lie. And I know the real you. He reached up, brushing a strand of hair from her face. You're the one who spent hours last weekend helping that crying child find their parents during the festival? You're the one who keeps everyone's spirits up, even when things are falling apart. You're the woman I fell in love with. The one stronger and kinder than anyone I've ever known. Kushina has locked eyes with him now, tears spilling anew, but for a different reason this time. And even if you take on a terrifying form, even if the fox tries to take over, I'll always find you, Kushina. You're not the mask. You're the person behind it. And I'll never stop loving you for that. Kushina broke into a sob, her body trembling. Minato straightens and sits beside her, hugging her with one arm over the shoulders. With his gentle contact, Kushina breaks and presses herself against his chest, clinging to him desperately. How can you be so sure? How can you trust me? Smiling gently and resting his chin on her head, Minato said, Because I know you, Kushina, and I've never trusted anything more in my life. Naruto grunted and reeled from the sudden surging memory from the fox, and gasped as he felt the fox's own twinge of guilt from the memory. Before he could even consider what he had just witnessed, it happened again, and he plunged into another memory, but one distinctly absent the fox. The room hummed with a low drone of machinery and the faint bubbling of various vials. The air was thick with the sharp tang of chemicals, a fitting atmosphere for the man standing at its center, his golden eyes alight with a spark of discovery. Orochimaru's fingers danced over a scroll laid out on the table before him, the intricate diagrams of the 8 trigram seal, the same used on Kushina, painstakingly copied onto its surface. In his other hand, he held a vial of blood drawn from Jugo, its contents swirling with an unnatural, faintly glowing energy. "A prison that does not simply bind, but synergizes," Orochimaru muttered to himself almost reverently. "It tempers a force as wild, but more cutting-edge than the Nine Tails itself, allows its energy to flow without obliterating the host." He paused, his sharp features contorting into a delighted grin. "The Uzumaki truly are a remarkable clan. Such craftsmanship, such audacity to turn chaos into an engine of power." He set the scroll down carefully and turned his gaze to the blood sample, his mind racing. "And Jugo's gift," Orochimaru murmured. "His body a conduit for nature's energy, but too unrefined, too unstable. It is much like the fox, isn't it? Raw and unrelenting power, but with the right seal." His grin widened as he turned towards a blank scroll, his hand reaching for a brush. He began to sketch with fluid precision, his strokes almost hypnotic in their elegance. "A seal that channels, controls, and amplifies, yes. Something that doesn't merely imprison the energy, but transforms it, reshapes it into a tool." The diagrams on the scroll began to take on a more concise, clean form, unlike the 8 trigram seal. It was a blend of Uzumaki sealing principles and his own sinister genius. He stepped back to admire his work, again his yellow eyes gleaming with manic satisfaction. "A prison and a doorway, not just a seal but a transformation," Orochimaru whispered. "One step closer to perfection, one step closer to immortality." He turned towards the center of the room where Jugo lay unconscious on a steel table, his body twitching slightly even in repose. Orochimaru approached him with the scroll in hand, his excitement barely contained. Smiling down at Jugo, Orochimaru continued. "You've given me quite the gift, haven't you, Jugo? Together we'll create something extraordinary, something the world has never seen." He traced a finger over the surface of the scroll, his gaze sharpening. "Where the Uzumaki saw only a cage, I see evolution." The dim light of the lab cast long shadows as Orochimaru prepared his tools, the first chilling step towards the creation of the curse mark, now fully realized in his mind. Naruto stumbled back, a sharp, electrifying pain radiating from his stomach as if something alive just clawed its way out. His knees buckled under the pressure, hands clutching at his abdomen where the nine-tailed seal lay hidden. "What? Oh, what's happening to me?" Naruto gritted his teeth, his voice trembling. The pain wasn't unfamiliar, but this time it carried a sinister edge, a calculated, invasive sensation. Suddenly, black markings began to spiral out from his stomach, creeping over his torso and arms like living ink. The patterns twisted and coiled, jagged and sharp, pulsating with a dark energy that made the air around him hum. Struggling to find her feet, Sakura saw Naruto recoiling and called out in alarm. "Naruto, what's going on?" Naruto's breathing slowed as the pain ebbed, replaced by an eerie calm. He flexed his fingers, feeling his strength returning in waves. His wounds no longer screamed with pain, but instead burned with a potent, foreign energy. Eyes narrowing as he massaged his stomach, Naruto muttered, "Orochimaru?" Realization dawned. This was one of Orochimaru's cursed marks, hidden within the nine-tailed seal. Orochimaru must have fused it there, knowing no one would think the seal would ever be tampered with since Minato and Jiraiya's grand blunder. Clenching his fists, Naruto's voice grew stronger. "I knew that guy had more up his sleeve than riddles." With a roar, he surged forward, his speed nearly double, as he closed the gap between himself and Shinato in a heartbeat. Shinato's eyes widened as Naruto's fist came inches from his face, the force splitting the air like a crack of lightning. He leaned back just in time as the fist grazed his chin, but the shockwave sent him sliding across the ground. "What is this foul play?" Shinato snapped, but Naruto cared not to listen. Naruto's attacks came in rapid succession, each blow stronger and more precise than before. Minato countered with his kunai, deflecting strikes while weaving in and out with his legendary speed. But even the Yellow Flash was finding his own son, outmaneuvering him. With his attention disrupted, Shinato's shadow clones dissipated. Sakura, meanwhile, forced herself upright, wiping the blood from her face. Her hands trembled from exhaustion, but she refused to let herself collapse. "I can't just stand here and watch, I have to help!" Sakura urged herself resolutely. Spotting an opening, she thought, she launched herself into the fray, a kunai gripped tightly in her hand. Minato deflected her strike with ease, spinning to deliver a devastating kick to her midsection. The impact sent her sprawling across the battlefield, but even as her body screamed in pain, she pushed herself up again. Glancing at her, Shinato's tone was cold. "You've lost pace." Gritting her teeth, Sakura shot back. "Maybe, but you're never fighting just one of us." She hurled herself at him again, using feints and minimal chakra to keep him distracted just long enough for Naruto to land a solid hit. Minato was forced back. His vest was tattered and his expression ever more serious. No one would have ever guessed such a battlefield would take place from atop the Kage heads, leaving a battle-scarred ruin in its wake. Craters littered the ground with tunnels from many Isobu throughout, and the air was thick with smoke and the tang of iron. Minato stood on one side, his breathing heavier than before. Naruto and Sakura faced him, battered but unyielding. Shinato's kunai spun in his hand, but he didn't charge. Instead, he studied them, his calculated gaze melting to fury. "That a pack of children think they can undo me is laughable," he taunted through the gray of rain. Naruto wiped blood from his cheek, his voice defiant. "We're not done yet. Summoning Jutsu!" Springing from the point Naruto smacked his hands into, a great snake lurched. "The second time you summon me and you're fighting the Yellow Flash!" The snake groaned as it coiled around Naruto and Sakura and protected them with his body. "Sorry, Kaida," Naruto addressed the snake apologetically. "We're kind of on our last legs here." Body quivering, head shaking, Kaida hissed in disbelief. "I'll be known for all time if I helped bring down the Hokage. Even Manda might approve of me." "He is tired, but he's still the Hokage," Naruto warned. "Don't be reckless, Kaida. Don't get yourself killed." "Acid swamp!" Kaida screeched, opening his mouth and spewing a veritable waterfall of acid. As his summoned snake fought to keep the Hokage distracted, Naruto fell to one knee and the ground twisted and shook for him. "Naruto, don't fight if you don't have to," Sakura pleaded. "I'm sure we'll find victory, especially once Sasuke resurfaces." "Sakura, if we fail here, we're in jail or dead," Naruto panted, closing his eyes to fend off the dizziness. "I'll use everything I have to take him down, even if that means my life." "We all stand with you, Naruto Uzumaki." A voice cut through the rain as Kaida was bludgeoned and thrown into the tree line. Standing atop the cliffside with Danzo under an arm, Neji stood tall. He was bloodied himself, but clearly willing to keep fighting. Glowing through the rain, it was impossible not to see his violet Byakugan glowing ominously. He dropped Danzo's limp body to the ground, barely sparing it a glance. "You've deceived us all, usurper, and I cannot let that stand." Neji's gaze did not waver. His posture was rigid, his injuries evident in the way he favored one leg and the faint tremor in his stance. "I didn't see the truth when I should have, but now I see everything." Without another word, it was Neji's turn to lunge at Minato, chakra surging in his palms. The rain bounced away from Neji without even coming close to him, as if his chakra exuded past his body. Minato threw a punch, but Neji easily dodged it, grabbing Minato by the collar and twisting to throw him to the mud. Twisting in the plunge, Minato landed on his feet and thrust a knee up to catch Neji in the face, but the latter had already moved. "I can see your Uchiha chakra now," Neji said, closing his eye and shaking his head. "It's all so obvious now." Minato paused, taken aback by Neji's discovery. Gawking at his one eye, Minato said, "What the hell is that?" His Uchiha chakra should not have been present at all in Minato's body. Swiveling his head toward the ground, Neji smirked. Seems Sasuke's discovered the truth as well. Stirring in the cold, murky water, and in absolute darkness to boot, Sasuke looked around in confusion. He was plunged into a pool of muddy water. Why is he now in a shelter where the rain could not reach him? The fall had knocked the wind out of him, but he wasn't out of the fight yet. Slowly, he pulled himself to his feet and conjured a fireball in his hand to light the surroundings. Where am I? The air was thick with moisture, the sound of dripping water echoing through the cavernous space. As he navigated the uneven ground, he noticed a faint light flickering in the distance. Following the glow, Sasuke stumbled upon a small room carved into the rock. A single candle burned on a table, its light casting long, flickering shadows across the stone walls. Seated against the far wall was a figure, cloaked in darkness. Despite Sasuke's clear presence opposite the figure, the latter did not stir. So, we finally reunite, Shisui mocked, his head picked up as his hood fell, revealing two shut eyes. Sasuke's eyes narrowed as he stepped forward, his hand fingering a shotokan in his pack. Shisui, Sasuke muttered in disbelief, looking around the room again. How long have you been hiding here? The Hokage is impossibly strong, Shisui chuckled, shaking his head with disbelief. The closer I am, the easier it is to control him. When I took that kid during the Chunin exams, I thought I could control Minato from afar. But he broke free before I'd even fled to safety. It became obvious that I needed to return and continue the pressure in hiding. This is not how the Koto Matsukami was described. Sasuke shook his head. The Mangekyo ability was a one-time use, not a continued one. Pointing to his right eye, Shisui explained. The Koto Matsukami as you know it is held in this eye. I simply need to look at someone, and they've already experienced a new reality. But the Hokage was far too powerful for that. Hand moving over to his left eye, he concluded, the Koto Matsukami as I've been using it is the continued channeling on Minato. With this, I can control him directly and imprint my changing decisions on the fly. It's got a few weaknesses, but for its ultimate value I'm willing to deal with them. It's arguably even more powerful, but... Shisui finally opened his eyes, displaying an opaque gray to both. It leaves me permanently blind. These caves haven't been used for their original function since the first Ninja War, Shisui continued unprompted. We hold a public burial for the Kage when they pass away, but their bodies are interred here. Chakra, like the bones on your skeleton, doesn't just vanish when you die. It stays with the body until otherwise exhausted and augments everything around it until then. Sasuke looked around the cave, almost expecting to feel something different from that information. How can I be so sure you're not lying to me? He said. You've never been to the Valley of the End, have you? Shisui asked, shaking his head dismissively. They carried Hashirama Senju's body back to the village back then, and gave him an honorable end. But they left Madara Uchiha out there as a traitor to the village. In more present times, we would have taken him back to prevent his secrets from being stolen. But those were the times. And the effects his residual chakra has had on the land is immense. Madara was no more powerful than the first Hokage, Sasuke argued, as his internal thoughts began conflicting on whether he should be talking or fighting right now. I'm sure you've heard the rumors, though, Shisui smiled, that the nine-tailed fox died with them? Now that's a monstrous release of chakra. The Nine Tails is inside Naruto, Sasuke answered, at this point disappointed that even when up against it all, Shisui would still lie. Shrugging, Shisui said, That's what they say. How have you hid here undetected for so long? Sasuke pushed, realizing Shisui was distracting him, but his diversion had turned incoherent. Was he suggesting that the thing inside Naruto wasn't even the nine-tailed fox? I told you, Shisui sighed. These caves are flooded with chakra. They hid me even from the immutable gaze of the Hyuga. Well, until now. Why are you so open with these details? Sasuke asked, confounded by the flood of information. Because you're not leaving this cave alive. I might not be able to defeat the Hokage, but some snot-nosed leftover of my clan will be easy pickings. I don't think you have anything left without your famous eyes, Sasuke snarled, sliding a foot back as he adopted a defensive posture. You really think I'd hide in the village without the ability to defend myself? Shisui asked, rising from the chair and discarding the cloak that had been masking him. Time to finish what I started. And that's the end of today's episode. Again, I don't sound that bad right now, but my voice hurts. Doing all those snake voices and Orochimaru voices and Kurama voices, I just add like a growl to everything and it hurts. It's fine at first, but you do it so often and it gets at you. As we creep ever closer to the end of this arc, we will see even more revelations like today. I liked the idea of Orochimaru using the 8 trigram seal for tailed beasts as an inspiration for his curse mark. And that's not even to necessarily change the curse mark from canon. Just because Jugo can use it so liberally doesn't mean it requires no explanation on Orochimaru's side of things. This week in work, I've had to do nearly 2 hours of overtime every single day, so I was concerned about whether I'd get this episode out on time. It was pretty important that I did because of all the new information in this one. I obviously threw in some more world building at the end. I try to world build around things that aren't explained or given any thought in canon. And obviously it's not to insult canon, but that's just what my brain does when I read. I'm sure this happens to a lot of people, that as we read, we form questions and hope those questions are answered eventually. Well, something like, where does the chakra go when you die, is one of those questions I've always had. Wait. Hashirama can conjure this mile-high titan of wood that can even throw a tailed beast around, but when he dies, nothing special happens with his chakra? Stuff like that irks me to go unanswered, so I felt it was prudent to develop in my rewrite. Especially when you consider characters like the Gold and Silver brothers from the Land of Lightning. I get that they consumed the fox's chakra and became sort of pseudo-Jinchuriki, but after they died, why would that chakra stay with them until they were revived in the 4th Ninja War? Why does no one ask that question? They died, so the chakra should go away, right? Like with all other Jinchuriki? No? These kinds of things keep me up at night. Anyway, let's finish with the riddle. When shadows dance in a hollowed den, a truth untold will rise again. The slug confronts the fleeting crow. In mirrored eyes the secrets grow. A flash of light, a fall from grace, the mask unveiled in a timeless space. 2 storms converge, their fates entwined, as the dawn breaks what was maligned. Thank you all for listening. The sky's the limit!